When you have diversity at the table, you have comprehensive, well-rounded ideas from people who have different backgrounds and different experiences and a different way of doing things. And that is what I think makes an organization healthy.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Aepiphanni Off The Cuff. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host, and I'm joined as always by our co-host, Hazel Haygood. Hazel, how are you?
I am grand, Rick. How are you?
Oh, grand. Okay. So do you have a list of like how you're doing? Because every time it's like a different...
Yeah, well, I'm feeling something new today, so let's go with grand.
Okay. Awesome. And today we have a special guest. Angela is in our studio. She is the queen of the Titan Industries, let's say. Angela, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the show.
You've gotten some accolades around the Atlanta metro area and doing some pretty cool stuff. Give our guests some background on you.
All right. So I am the CEO of Titan Global Enterprises, which is a security and event staffing company based in Atlanta. So we actually have a security license in Georgia and Florida, so we can operate in any of those states currently. But we work with some pretty large venues. My background was in hospitality for 20 years prior to launching Titan in 2015. So I had a pretty robust understanding of all aspects of hospitality and events. And one of the pain points that I found was that we just didn't have a great opportunity for staffing in a holistic and efficient and customer focused way. So the idea behind Titan is that we staff any position within an event or venue. And we provide skilled W-2 permanent employees who are trained, who are, engaged in the process, who are fully versed in all aspects of hospitality, so that truly you get the guest experience that you're looking for. So some of our clients are State Farm Arena, University of Georgia Athletics. You may have heard of them. They just won the national championship. We were working with the Braves last year when they won their World Series. We work with Gas South Arena. We work with a lot of the big stadiums and arenas throughout the Georgia area, throughout Georgia, as well as a lot of venues and events. So we're going to be starting next week working the Atlanta Open, which is a professional tennis event here in Atlanta.
Wow, you are a go big or go home kind of girl, huh?
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I love it. I mean, we've got a really excellent team who really kind of makes it all happen. So I'm just one small part of this, but our team is fantastic. We've got event managers and venue managers and everybody who kind of pulls it all together. So definitely can't do it without all of them.
That's awesome. Awesome. Accolades to the team.
Hey.
So we, as you know, on our show, we like to talk about the entrepreneurial journey, where we started from and, what you've experienced in getting to where you are now. So, yeah. I mean, if you want, can you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. So I actually I started bussing tables when I was 13 years old. So, I mean, I've been in hospitality literally my entire career. I actually have a degree in criminal psychology, not that that's applicable to what I do today, but every time I think I'm leaving hospitality, I find my way back in. And so, I also found that I challenge the status quo quite a bit. So I tend to I work better when I work, when I run my company, because people don't like to be told how to run theirs. So it works better this way. So, I've been an entrepreneur for almost my entire career. So I started my first company, which was events and promotions. So we mostly did every kind of restaurant promotion, liquor promotion. It was all kind of more brand ambassador based. And did that almost as an accident. I started just wanting to do some business networking events because there just wasn't a lot of opportunities there. You could go to the Chamber of Commerce, which was fine, but when you're, in your early 20s, you feel like the youngest one by 20 years. So I said, there needs to be something better. So I started doing these business networking events, and it kind of accidentally became a business. And so I had no idea what I was doing. I had never had a business class. I had never had any kind of training in, starting a business. And so I kind of fumbled my way through it. And then 9/11 kind of crushed the business, but we still had a viable product. But at that point, I, again, had no business experience. I didn't know you could just sell a business and, sell the assets of a business. So instead, I just shut down what was a pretty valuable business and said, I'm just going to move to Florida. So I moved to Florida, shut down the business, which we had, at that point, a good amount of, 2,000 people on a mailing list and great contacts. And I had somebody come up to me and offer me to, I'll buy the assets of the business. And I was like, nah, it's not worth anything. And I shut it down. Boy, looking back now, you learn so much the hard way when you don't have that. But it was interesting. And then, in Florida, I actually started a second business with a partner who it was my husband at the time, and we did travel and meeting management. So we booked travel for like large government organizations, corporations, associations, and we managed their travel and meetings all around the world. And that was interesting, and it gave me the opportunity to travel and really kind of see all aspects of the events and meetings industry and kind of how corporate and government does meetings. And then in our divorce, I sold him my share of the company. That time I learned a little bit more and decided I wasn't going to start another business unless I was solving a problem. And so, because owning a business it's tough. It's a tough game. You have to wake up every day, and no matter how big that mountain is in front of you, you got to be willing to make that climb. And it is not easy. So unless it was something where I felt like I had purpose, it wasn't going to be just start another business just to do it. So I decided that staffing was the big black hole in our industry in terms of people just didn't get it right. You could either use a temp agency, which, you have very general staff, not trained. You're not sure if they're going to show up. You're not sure if there's any consistency, or you have specialty agencies, which, you have great security companies and so forth, but they may not be hospitality companies, So I said, we need a good hospitality company that just focuses on staffing, and they're trained W-2 employees. They work any position within an event or venue. So, if you watch the Hawks, typically, we work for State Farm Arena. So we'll build the Hawks basketball floor every time they play on it. And then every time there's a concert the next night, we pick that floor up, put it in the back, and we help set up the next event. So, those things that happen in the background, and then the things that happen that you see at events. So, the security team on the floor, the security team at the gates doing bag check, that's us too. So, we run every aspect, within the hourly positions within an event or venue, and it creates a more holistic and efficient workplace. Our team really does understand events through and through, and it makes it a different experience. So I have just this passion for hospitality since I've been in it for so long. And so it really does drive me every single day to get up and do new cool stuff. And, in the events industry, every day is different anyway. So that's kind of my entrepreneurial journey. And then during the pandemic, I actually started doing some business coaching because our business shut down. When you work only in really large venues, I mean, our attendance is in the thousands, and when you're not allowed to have people that, more than 10 people gathered, kind of changes the dynamic. So we shut down for a little while in 2020, and I used that time to start coaching, and I realized what a passion I have for coaching, which is what led me to start my podcast.
Outstanding. Yeah. Wow. What a journey.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that it was not easy, quote unquote.
No.
And I think that's an understatement, because you also mentioned 9/11, which means you've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So you've gone through a number of major financial crises,
Yeah. It's crazy because everybody. Yeah, exactly. Yep. We've lived through all of them, and we're still here to tell the story, and we're still in business, and it's crazy. Everybody's like, wow, you're about to go into a recession. I was like, wake me up when there's something important coming down. When you've gone through a major pandemic, a terrorist attack like 9/11, a major recession like this, what we're in now, it sucks, but we're pushing through. So
Absolutely. What were some like standout moments through your career?
Okay. So the University of Georgia contract was a really big deal. So, it's interesting because I had attended a game, with my son and with some of our friends, and they were all playing football together. My son was probably 10 or something at the time, and I attended a game, and the company that was there providing staff, it was just not what I would consider up to par for the level of, University of Georgia is a really nice university, great athletics program. And it just didn't feel like they were meeting the expectation. And so, as we're going in through the gates, one of my pet peeves is people who are just sitting there eating while working. It's just one of my pet peeves. and so like, I'm all about professionalism. And, so we're going through the gates, and some people the staff is there, and I'm like, nobody's checking us. Like, we could be walking in with like, anything, and nobody's checking us, and people are just, the staff was sitting down at the gates eating food, and it just looked sloppy and messy. And so I had reached out to the University of Georgia and their athletics program, and I was like, have you guys ever thought about bringing on a different security company? He was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I mean, here are the things that I found that I think could be improved. And I was like, here's where we work, which nothing even compared to University of Georgia. And I said, I'd love to just sit down and talk. And he said, okay, that's fine. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Really? Like, you'll have a conversation with me? That's awesome. So I had driven out to Athens and had a conversation. He's like, look, you have no experience in working a venue of this size. I love that you're a local woman-owned small business. I think that's fantastic. I think that, you guys have a lot of potential. I like what you're saying in terms of things that you could see improve. But, you have to kind of do a test run. He said, if you can get this person to hire you within the stadium. So it was another kind of division of the staffing in the premium areas. He said, if you can get them to hire you, I'll give you an opportunity to bid on the contract. So this was a really big deal because it's really hard to get the opportunity to bid on these contracts for large venues. And we had just had a situation with another large venue where our professional football team plays. And I won't name any names, but they suck. Oh, no. for now. Hopefully things will turn around for them. But anyway, so so I just had an experience with one of the stadiums here in Atlanta. And I had met the general manager at an event in the events industry. I'm big on sustainability and green meetings, and he was as well. And so we met at this forum, and I, developed a rapport with him, and we started talking. And I said, I'm getting this staffing thing off the ground. I'd really like the opportunity to bid on, the stadium when it's ready. We were still a couple years away from that because it was still, they're breaking ground on it. And he's like, oh, absolutely. We'd love to get a small woman-owned business involved. I think that would be fantastic. Be great exposure for you, be great for the stadium. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then a couple years go by, and I heard through the grapevine that this bid was out for staffing for the stadium. And I had kind of, I reached out to him, and I was like, hey, just curious about this because, you said this bid was, we would be included in the bid process. And I don't recall, seeing it. Did I miss it somewhere? And he was like, well, no, you didn't miss it. We've just determined that you're not substantial enough to bid. And I was like, ouch, that's really hurtful. But, what was frustrating about it is, it's actually super, it was not okay the way he did it because it's, what is it called? Basically you can't prevent someone from at least submitting an offer. It's called, I can't remember the exact term, but, anyway, so that was pretty hurtful. And so the fact that UGA gave me the opportunity to bid, as long as we did a good job, for this other division, was a really huge thing. So just having the opportunity to bid, because as a small business, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I kind of went into it as this is going to be a great learning experience. All of these huge nationwide companies are going to come in and submit bids, but I'm going to get to see what it is that they're bidding, what they're asking for, and it'll set us up to prepare better in the future to grow into that area, right? Like I had no real idea that we would actually win the bid. I really just thought this would be a great learning opportunity. And so I went into it with the mentality of, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm not going to let him regret his decision to let me bid. But at the same time, I'm realistic enough to know we can't compete with these massive companies. We're definitely coming in as the underdog. Yeah. And so we submitted our bid, and part of the bid process was that we had to do to up our insurance, like dramatically up our insurance. So, went from $1 million policy or $2 million policy to a $10 million policy. And we had to do all this crazy stuff. Mm. And so anyway, I'm about to write a premium check for more money than I was paying myself annually. And I was like, I don't even know if we're in the top 3 and we're about to, to dramatically increase our costs right now. And so I had sent him an email and I said, look, you don't have to answer me. This is more of just a gut check moment for me, but I'm on my way to the bank to do a transfer for more money than I'm paying myself, just in hopes that we're still in consideration for this bid. Can you just tell me if you're even taking this seriously or not? Like, should I even be doing this? Or are you just, giving me that grace of like, okay, she's learning. And I said, because I don't know which way this is going to go. And I'm sitting in the bank and I'm like probably sweating bullets right now. And all of a sudden I get a call and he says, congratulations, you've won the contract for the university. And I was like, no way. And I actually,
that is phenomenal.
And so I actually was like hugging the branch manager and like celebrating inside the bank. It was crazy. But yeah, so that was probably one of the most pivotal moments. And then after that, it just became oh shit, we got this. Now what? We got to actually make this work. And so then the hard work really started. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but yeah, it was a great moment and probably one of those things that probably the highest level anxiety to like such relief to right back up to high anxiety. And they say being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster ride, and they are not kidding. Mm-hmm. It's all in, all out, up and down, and sideways, and twists and turns. Yep. So yeah,
100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, you've been through a few different economic downturns, and it's interesting because I can kind of relate where things become old hat. It's like, oh yeah, well we'll get through it. Nobody's gonna die here. But what was what is an experience that you had that was really it really kind of rocked your world. You might have been like trucking along, and then suddenly the carpet. Which time the carpet got pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah, oddly enough, it comes internally for us. So, we've survived the, other major disasters that were external, pandemic and financial crisis and all that. Mm-hmm. The hardest rocking experience came internally. I had a director of operations who I just trusted fully. And, he had been manipulating me, and, he had encouraged me to hire some of his, kind of personal friends, relatives. And I did that, with the assumption that he knew what he was doing and he had my best interests in mind. And really they were kind of, him and his brother were kind of collectively taking advantage of me. And it was, getting stabbed in the back by people who are close to you that you've trusted with your company, which, for me, I'm a single mom. This is it for me, and so this is my other child. And so, this is how I put food on the table in our house. And so for somebody internally to be backstabbing you, there were just lies after lies after lies and manipulations, and all of it came to light literally 2 months before we were supposed to start the UGA contract. And so I had to clean house, basically just, I was the only one left in the company, because it was a couple of the people in the company that were, close. And he said, well, if I leave, I'm taking everyone with me. And I said, Don't let the door hit you in the ass. And so he tried to, he tried to say, if you don't give me 30% of the company, I'm going to contact all of your clients. I'm going to contact all your employees. I'm taking everything from you. And so just a lot of threats and manipulation. And it really kind of put a damper on things. I found out he was lying about some pretty significant things that were supposed to be in the works and weren't. Our hiring process, our recruiting process, like the whole thing. There was just so much deception. And so at the end of it, I was, a month away, and I ended up calling my mom, of all people. And I said, Mom, and my mother has the strongest work ethic of anyone I've ever met. Like she worked, 3 or 4 jobs my whole life growing up. She was a single mom, very strong work ethic, very strong integrity. And she was working full time somewhere. And I called her and I said, Mom, I have nobody that I can trust. I feel like I have nobody in the whole world that I can trust right now. And I need you to come work with me. And she's like, you can't afford to pay me. And I was like, I'll pay you before I pay me, but I can't let this fall because there's too many people involved. There's too many, employees' livelihoods on the line and clients who are depending on us and commitments that we've made. And, she had to think about it because she's like, we're going to kill each other. And I said, I know this. This is something I'm walking into knowing. And so because we're very, very similar. And so she said, she thought about it for a couple of days and she's like, okay, I'm going to come do it. And so she came in and basically helped me to bring the company where it needed to be in order to fulfill all of our contract obligations. And, now that part of the company is being run better than it ever has. I've got a great, team of management that I can fully trust again, but it's taken a while to get there. But I'm very lucky that I've been able to turn this all around.
So you've opted to put that you're a women-owned business, out there. Go to your website; it's there. You talked about that in the UGA bid process. What was your thinking when you decided to use that or to leverage that, and kind of what was the process?
So it was not easy, honestly, because I think a lot of women who are in business, we tend to shy away from owning that part of it because we feel like it will make us look weaker. It will give us, a disadvantage. And I just decided a few years ago that it wasn't going to be a disadvantage. It was going to be something that, I know what I bring to the table and I know what my team brings to the table. And we provide a different type of service. We actually can get out there and there's more empathy on our team. There's more, we genuinely care. We treat our employees like their family. And so I think we just run things differently here. And, in the security industry, and especially in my particular segment, which is large venue, stadium, and arena staffing, there's very few of us. And so for me to come out and say, hey, we're a woman-owned company, it was it's intimidating because, many of our employees, like when I would go to appointments, I would almost never tell people I was the owner, like I would be accompanied with one of my male executives on the company because I just was afraid of what they would think if they thought, it started and ended with me. And it was scary. But I think over time, I think we've been able to prove ourselves as being a significant, vendor in the industry. And it's something that I'm proud of. And it took a lot because in women's circles, in our social circles, it's not necessarily something that you want to promote. Women don't talk about business and careers and, a lot of things that I need to know as an entrepreneur. So, social circles are hard. Like I rarely talk about business with other women. Typically if I'm in a circle of other women, we're talking about our kids, the teachers, the bus drivers, the community, whatever's happening, volunteer opportunities. But we're not talking about, blasting through the glass ceilings, and we're not talking about, climbing the ladder, and we're not talking about all those things. Whereas in male circles, they really are, it's an acceptable conversation. And so that was kind of the reason I wanted to launch the podcast, because there needed to be a safe space where we can talk about how awesome we're doing and how we're kicking ass at everything that we're taking on and that we're meeting our goals and that we're shattering projections. You know, we needed that safe space. And in order for us to have that safe space, I needed to get comfortable with the fact that we're a women-owned business and we needed to own it and stand tall in that power, and not shy away from it. And it's not been an easy task because, you know, I think we generally will get downplayed because it's a woman-owned business.
That's amazing.
But I'm tired of being the underdog. I want to be the one that isn't the underdog anymore. And, you know, for us, being a woman-owned business, I think immediately makes you the underdog. But I'm not, you know, I'm not the underdog. We are as competent and as good as anyone out there, if not better. So, you know, it's just, it is not something that I take lightly. I feel the pressure of performing well to open up the doors for other women.
For sure. That's important. That's important. It's interesting because, you know, I guess, you know, you can almost think about it. I think from what I'm hearing from you is you're starting to look at it like a badge of honor. You know, it's something that you are leading the way with. I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome. I think more women-owned companies really need to do that because it is important. It's a different. I don't want to say it's different, but I think in the business world, it needs to be something that's common. You know, it needs to be something that
it really
everybody
does.
embraces. It's fine. It's no big deal.
Yeah. And women need to step up and say, you know, and be proud of what they've accomplished and not be shying away from it, which is what I see a lot of times is women will downplay their success and men will overplay their success. Right. So I think women tend to be just a little bit more embarrassed about success, to be honest. And so like, you don't really want to mention anything. Like when I was writing my bio, I was like, I shouldn't mention this and I shouldn't mention that. And shouldn't sound like an ego trip. But really like, you know, I've read bio after bio after bio on my podcast, and women, you know, the first thing women say after you read their bio is, oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. Or, oh, that sounds terrible. Or, you know, and I'm like, own this, own the power, own the struggle. Like we have fought and fought and fought. And for you to not own that, it really is, you know, it reflects on you, you know, like own what you've accomplished. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hazel, got anything?
When
I'm hearing all this and I'm just so fascinated, to be honest, especially the fact that you've used women empowerment, like being a female leader to your advantage, you know. So what is it precisely about women leadership that drive so much impact to an organization?
Oh, it's such a great question, Hazel. So let me tell you two experiences that I had that really kind of led me down this path. So number one, during the pandemic, when I started doing business coaching, I would coach minority entrepreneurs, right? And so these were minority entrepreneurs who had won through a grant program and they had asked for coaching, and it was part of like a 12-week or 16-week series. But it was a collective, you know, men and women. And so, their commonality was that they were part of a minority segment. And so I would coach them, and I had the same experience in two different groups that I've coached. And that was that the men tended to take this as something that was normal, you know, like getting the advice. Like they weren't all that driven. They weren't all that excited about it. You know, they would kind of show up, but then not show up for a few weeks. And then they would come back and I'm like, hey, did you guys do your homework? No, I didn't really do it. Whereas the women were so thirsty for knowledge. They were just engaged. They were on time. They were ecstatic about it. They were going above and beyond, you know, like when I say, did you do your homework? They're like, yes, here it is. Let's review it. You know, and so like we're going through every little bit of it, and, you know, they're connecting on LinkedIn and they're connecting outside of, you know, what I'm doing, and they're looking up me, you know, and they're like, hey, I saw that you did this and I saw that you did that. And I Googled you. I don't think the men even knew what my name was. Like, and so it was just a different experience. But for me, it really highlighted the fact that women don't have that same access. And like I was talking about these social circles and the interactions that you have in these social circles, it's not common for women to talk about business and success with other women. And so for them, it was like this opportunity to gain knowledge and to gain wisdom from someone who looked like them, who's been through that same thing. They were just ecstatic about the opportunity. And so they were so engaged. And I was just like, there's a need here. There is a need for women to have this type of support. And so, after that, first year of coaching, my business started picking up and getting busy again. I had to step back from coaching, but it haunted me because I just thought it's a need that needs to be filled. And there's not enough support for women providing the support for other women. Right. And so the women need to step up. And so what was happening, especially in different, kind of the older generations, is that women would climb their way to the top and you would be very few of them, right? So you'd have a woman at the top, an executive, right? Not 50%, but an executive. And she worked so hard to be there that the last thing she was doing was pulling somebody else up. Women became very competitive and they were very protective of their spot, right? Because they knew there weren't very many of them. So, women were more, a little bit more competitive against other women and not necessarily lifting them up, but saying, hey, I got here, you got to figure it out too. And they would almost be sabotaging. I've talked to so many women who said they were sabotaged by the women who were leaders in their organization because the women were threatened by other women because again, there's not that many roles for them. And so they would fight to keep that spot. Right. And that mentality is what's got to change. That mentality of you're threatened by other women or you've got to keep your spot at the top because there is enough room. And trust me, there is enough prosperity for all of us, but we've got to do that next step, which is lift others up who need that help. And so the second big thing that really happened was I volunteered for a high school competition. And it was an entrepreneur competition and they had to come in groups of 2. And so they had to come up with this business idea and talk about, how they would market it. And so I reviewed all these different teams and by far the best teams because their responses were all good. These kids were the best in the nation, right? So this was a national competition. They're coming in and they are, the best of the best. And these kids are brilliant and all of their answers were great. However, the men or the young men, when they would give their answers were more based in operations and logistics, right? So they were very operation and logistics focused, hey, how do you think we should launch this new franchise? Well, we need to focus on training. We need to focus on, how to build out the store. We need to focus on this. And then you ask the women team, the female teams, and they would say, we need to focus on customer service. We need to focus on, human resources and branding and marketing. But the diverse teams that brought those ideas together, that was a more well-rounded answer. That was comprehensive. And the same, and what I found is that when you had African-American teams or Latina teams, their answers typically ended up being more along the lines of, we need mentorship, we need community involvement. And so, when you could diversify and say, all of these answers are brilliant, how about if we diversify our team and have the most comprehensive solution possible, right? And that way, and that's what I think women bring to the table and diversity brings to the table, because when you have diversity at the table, you have comprehensive, well-rounded ideas from people who have different backgrounds and different experiences and a different way of doing things. And that is what I think makes an organization healthy.
Wow, I'm applauding in my head, it's like standing ovation.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So,
absolutely.
But yeah, so that's really kind of what drove me through, wanting to do this podcast, wanting to give women a safe space to say, hey, I'm rocking out this thing in my career, or I'm doing business consulting, or I'm wrote a book, or I'm, own a basketball team, and, really kind of showcasing how badass these women are and how you can really make it so that women are bringing so much to the table now. And everybody in their mind, every time I say this, they're like, but women have the same amount of opportunities. They really don't. If you look at it on Wall Street, women run companies with women on the board of directors actually bring in more revenue than male only board of directors, which is still a good majority of them, is male only. But if you look at the diversity, the diverse board of directors and the diverse leadership actually generates more revenue for shareholders. So why wouldn't we all want that? right? So why aren't we really focused on that? But then if you look at the actual statistics of like, everybody thinks, oh, it's just equal, it's equal, it's equal. Somebody said, oh, well, I'm so excited because we just learned that there's like 1 out of 20 companies now have a woman on the board of directors. I'm like, that's good. That's not something to celebrate, 1 out of 1, that's something to celebrate, and so, yes, we're making a little bit of progress, but less than 3% of all venture capital funds went to women founders. So it's not equal, right? Until it's 50%, less than 3%. So the highest it's ever been was like 2.7%, was like 2021 for venture capital funds to be awarded to women-run companies. And so, that's where there's still a lot of room. There's still so much that we can be doing in diversity and inclusion to make it right. And I know in Atlanta, we're very fortunate because we've got a lot of great Black leadership here where they really are doing some incredible things for the minority communities. And, we're very lucky, but not everybody has that.
True. A question, I guess, is kind of edgy on that. You talked about pursuit. I mean, is it a situation where women are being prejudiced against, or is it, and maybe not even, or is it a situation where women aren't necessarily pursuing it? You'd said earlier on that a lot of times women didn't like to have the conversations around business, and they were less likely to promote themselves in the same way, and that sort of thing. So what were your thoughts on that?
Yep. Rick, I think it's everything. I think there's definite, there's a case for both of those. So, when you look at studies of, people who are applying for jobs, men are more likely to apply for a job that they're not qualified for and assume that they have an equal opportunity to get it, right? So they will take a job that they're only, 70% qualified for, and they will apply. Women won't apply for a job unless they're overqualified for it, right? Because they're so afraid, well, I am missing this, piece of like, not being able to do this X, but women won't apply. And so women won't put themselves in a position of, getting a job necessarily that might be beyond their qualifications, whereas men typically will. So men are bigger risk takers. Also, women will look at things like, what kind of work-life balance will this give me? And so if it's going to take away from the other parts of their life, being a mom, being a wife, to being a volunteer, working at their school, so they'll tend to shy away from executive positions that are going to require more of them. And I think it's on the companies to say, hey, look, how can we provide the right balance so that we can get the right diverse, leadership in our company without everybody having to sacrifice everything else that's valuable to them. And so there's that aspect of it. There's also the aspect of, women not feeling safe to have these conversations, women not having that same, demand for equality. And so when it comes to business loans, women who go in and seek a business loan will generally get approved for 30% less than a man and still pay higher interest rates. So, it's a collective bias that we have to start saying, why is that? And how can we overcome that? And can you give me further information about that? Like if I go in and there's a male counterpart who's, launching a business too, I might ask for a little bit less because I'm going to ask for just what I need. And he's going to ask for more, right? Because he's going to say, I need more. And that's forward thinking. And that's, women are used to not, kind of over projecting. We want just enough to get us by. And so, we don't want to exaggerate, what we're looking for when it comes to a resume, when it comes to money, when it comes to, we want to be in the safe space, but we also have to get comfortable having those conversations. And that's where Pretty Powerful Podcast came from, was that, I want people to go in and own this leadership quality and own this, the ability to ask for what you want.
I love that. It's interesting. I'm coaching a couple of women that are launching an app, and it was, they went in asking for a certain amount of money, and I was like, no, you need more than that. You need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And you need to go ask for it
Yeah.
consistently, continuously.
Yes.
It's like, don't
Mm-hmm.
shy away.
Yep.
They've got a great product. There's no reason why not.
Yeah. Yep. Isn't it? Yeah. And so I'm sure you're seeing exactly what I'm saying here with these women is that, they're probably going to downplay their abilities. You're probably like, but do you understand what you've got here? And they're like, well, I mean, it's okay. Right. And so
Exactly.
yeah. So women need to see themselves as game changers. And I think that doesn't happen as much as it should.
Yeah. One of the things that I've observed, like in terms of gender bias and in leadership, female leadership, is that women are typically associated with being emotional. So
yeah.
I'm curious to know about your thoughts on that and how the leadership style of women differs from men.
So I think that we are definitely more emotional in some ways. But I think that it actually helps out in leadership quite a bit, especially when you're talking about empathy. Yeah. There have been multiple times where I've had to go to our male managers and say, I need you to take a little bit of a softer touch on that. Like I need us to not get sued. Yeah. And also like you get more bees with honey than vinegar. Right. And so, I do tend to want to bring people into the empathy circle of like, understand that people have lives outside of here and, we need to understand and, so, but, I'm also, more of a hard driver than probably most. And so, I'm very process oriented, not very people oriented. And so like, I know this about myself. And so there are times when I'm like, I need somebody else to have this conversation because I don't do the whole emotion thing. And so it is probably a little different with me because I'm not driven by emotion, but women who are, I think there's no different between women or men who are. I think there are men who are emotionally driven, but their emotions are different, right? And so their emotion might be anger or their emotion might be, whereas women, ours comes across as sadness. A man might blow up on somebody and be like, you're fired, blah, 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 blah. Whereas I might be hurt and upset that somebody has backstabbed me, and so our emotions are different, but not necessarily something that I feel is detrimental. I think ultimately women make great leaders and that they do have that, their emotional component of empathy and, understanding people's, where they're coming from is really plays into that.
Good stuff.
I love that. You say that you're process oriented, but I was speaking with Rick earlier and I was telling him that I was looking through Angela's LinkedIn profiles and her tweets, and I was like, I'm so fascinated because the way you write, I can tell that you care very much for your employees. There is heart to your organization. So I just want to dive into that a bit about your own leadership style. So tell us more about how you approach things, what you've gotten right in the past, what you've gotten wrong, and how you instill a culture of organizational loyalty in your company.
So I think for us, instilling loyalty is really tough because people have a lot of options, especially now, everybody's hiring. And so I think one of the ways that we instill loyalty is that we really truly, we build this Titan brand, and it's not just something that's on their shirt. Like, we call them Titans, we're like, you are a Titan. There is an expectation to how you behave. And it's goes throughout our entire organization to the point where if I walk into a client's venue, and he'll say, oh yeah, we've got some staff over here. Oh, but all the Titans are over there. So like he calls us Titans, like when other people call us Titans, it's something that you have to live up to. And so that's something. And then we also use phrases like tighten up, like we'll tell people they need to tighten up in our organization. Sorry, this thing is popping up on my screen. But yeah, so tighten up is something that we say to people to make sure they understand that there's an expectation of excellence within our organization, but they do collectively feel like they're part of a family. We engage constantly. And that's one thing that I think being a woman-owned company is there's constant engagement and constant need to like develop people, right? So I don't just want to provide a job. Like I don't want to be, a black hole in their career. I want people to look back and say, oh yeah, those years that I was with Titan, those were pivotal because I learned this and I did that. And so like with our team, we encourage tons and tons of training. Like we're constantly coming up with new training protocols and new training modules that we want them to complete because ultimately I want them to be a better person, a more well-rounded person at the end of this. So we really we invest in our employees. We want to make sure that they feel seen. We do put out like surveys and we ask them what they're looking for. We try to run incentives. And so we do try to engage. We have newsletters. We have, email communications. We've got a software network that we're all belong to. So we kind of keep that, that handout to say, we want you guys to keep walking this path with us.
I want people to have an opportunity to listen to your podcast. And so what's the best way that they can find you?
So our podcast is on all the major streaming networks. So everywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can pull up the Pretty Powerful Podcast with Angela Gennari, or you can go to prettypowerfulpodcast.com and you'll see all of our episodes and our guests.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been fun. It's been insightful. I really enjoyed it.
Yes.
You're quite the Titan. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been such fun.
Great. Folks, thank you so much for watching another episode or listening to another episode of Epiphany Off the Cuff. We can't wait to see you next time. Don't forget, subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified next time our show drops. Take care. Thanks for watching another episode of Epiphany Off the Cuff. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next episode is going to drop. Don't forget, we're on podcasts as well, so you can catch us on your favorite podcasting platforms. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Epiphany Off the Cuff.